What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, and this is part 26 of my ranking and reviewing Frank Zappa's guitar solos within the context of an album. Today's album being A Token of His Extreme. This is the soundtrack to a live studio performance on KCET in Los Angeles that Frank gave back in August of 1974. It features what I think is the all-time best band Frank ever had. George Duke on keyboards, Chester Thompson on drums, Tom Fowler on bass, Napoleon Murphy Brock on all the things he does, vocals, saxophone, all that kind of stuff, flute, and Ruth Underwood on percussion. And there are zero complaints about this album. This might be one of the best releases ever, despite the fact that it's like a studio television performance, probably one of the most sterile environments, but Frank somehow manages to make it work, and excitingly well. There are 7 solos. I'm going to rank the solos, and then at the end I will show you how they rank, so you don't have to keep track, and then I will show you where this album falls among the other 25 that I've done. Number 7 is Stinkfoot. Short, playful, pretty intense, not a bad note. It's just kind of a Stinkfoot solo. Probably not as dramatic as other Stinkfoot solos, not as like, hey, we're beginning the show, let's ease into this as other Stinkfoot solos. Just a really good, solid Stinkfoot solo. Probably the one solo on here that isn't like fantastic. Like it's there, but it's a great version of there because it's the 74 version of Frank there. But yeah, number 7. Number 6, and we jump quite a bit. Now at this point, we got some really, really good solos. And I remember listening to this recently, going, okay, the first solo on here I think was Montana, which is what number 6 is, going, man, this might be the best solo on here. Yeah, it's number 6. I knew it wasn't the best solo on there because I know what was. But yeah, it's number 6. It's a great Montana. It's like a lot of the Montanas through 73 up through 74, I think it's one of Frank's best groove vehicles. The band just lays down this awesome groove and he just solos over it. It's pretty intense, but it's also playful. This one finds Frank almost like working against the groove and trying to challenge the band to like break down the groove or to force Frank back into it. But there's this weird like antagonistic sort of intention to some of his playing that I think defines Fall 74, and the way the band responds to Frank when he does it is what makes this tour so magical. And he's definitely kind of getting into that tentative nature of like, how do I push this band? And this is still relatively early in their run as this version of it. Yeah, it's kind of tentative. It's kind of a little all over the place. It never really slows down or falls apart, but it doesn't really ever pick up like one singular motif and go with it for a while. Yeah, it's got some really good moments. But yeah, it's not the same bouncy, just grooving Montana from this band's earlier incarnations, when they had the 2 drummers. It definitely is a little more like tense, kind of seeing where we would go with almost all the solos on this tour. But still really good solo, number 6. Number 5, and again, I thought this was going to be the number 2 solo. I was like, man, this has to be the second best solo on here. Pygmy Twilight, very interesting. The other Pygmy Twilight we have from this tour is on stage 2, which I think is one of the best solos Frank has ever played. It's a very heavy, hard rock, slightly metal solo. This one very much has a very optimistic, light vibe almost the entire time. Like almost the exact opposite energy as the Pygmy Twilight from the Volume 2, but it still works. Kind of in the very beginning, sort of the melodic ideas he's playing with reminds me of Alex Lifeson, kind of like the way I think particularly on like, specifically on like La Via Strangiato, that I think that second solo, when he leans into that note to like usher it in, that it reminds me of that kind of energy, and then eventually he goes off to like a Frank Zappa zone. But there's a little Lifeson energy in there. I think he kind of is fooling around with an Eco Rhodes idea, a little Eco Rhodes quote. It's a very very upbeat, very bright. There's a couple really key moments in the solos when he seems to be playing just like the same ideas over and over again. And Chester and George and Tom all follow, and it's like this tornado of them going like just playing these ideas in like circles, and then the tornado breaks apart and they go off. And it happens twice, and both those times are real like the energy leads to them, and the momentum that the like jam builds pushes them off for like, you know, another 30-40 seconds before they coalesce around it. Very playful, a lot of these neat little tornadoes throughout it. Definitely not as heavy or as intense as the volume 2 one, which is almost perfect, probably is perfect, but a really good Pygmy Twilight. And again, Frank's tone on all of these is fantastic. The band is fantastic, both the rhythm section, what Chester is doing, what Tom Fowler is doing, but there's a lot of interplay between Duke and Zappa, and Duke will play something and Zappa, it'll be like a call and response thing, and that happens in a lot of these solos. Just his connectedness to this band is just undeniable. But that was what was Pygmy Twilight? That was number 5. Number 4 is the solo in Oh No, Son of Orange County, specifically in Son of Orange County, but it's all one track. Very dramatic start to it, but the drama feels very much connected to the song itself, to the Oh No, I Don't Believe It, just that sort of, whatever that melancholy vibe is. The solo feels very connected to the song. I think that's one of the strengths of Fall 74. Almost all the solos that were like the big solos, this, Pygmy Twilight, Inca Roads, Dupree's to some extent, More Trouble Every Day, Stinkfoot Montana, all of the solos seem to be very connected to the song, and so there seems to be a little more of an emotional investment, whereas you go on in Frank's career, it's like you get to the solo section, it's like, we got a solo, right? These, I think, are his most like, they all feel like one piece, and the solo is as much a part of the song, the heart of the song, as anything else. I know that sounds kind of weird, but I know what I'm trying to say. But anyways, phenomenal solo, kind of weird, great back and forth between Duke and FC in this one. There are moments where it's like he kind of solos for a while, and then he reaches this point where it doesn't seem like much is happening, but the band is just like continuing to play and adding little flourishes, and it's just like jamming. It's just like this band in its natural habitat, just grooving along, like responding to whatever Frank wants to do on his guitar. It just has that really comfortable vibe. And this is only August. Like, this band would be together all the way through the new year. So just absolutely fantastic. Fantastic stuff. But that's number 4, Oh No, Son of Orange County. Not as epic as the one that's on the release I'm probably going to do next, but still really good. Number 3, More Trouble Every Day. This is just so absolutely all over the place. It is really just like, it starts off pretty like typical More Trouble Every Day, Coming Every Day type solo, and then it reaches that point, and this happens in a lot of solos on this tour, which is why I love this band, is where it seems like the bottom just falls out and the song's about to fall apart, and like there's nobody keeping the one and there's no rhythm, and like, wait, what just happened? Like, are we just gonna have to start over from scratch? But then Chester will hit some random like drums, and then Duke will come in with something, and then Frank rips off a couple licks, and the next thing you know, they jump fully into some other groove or back into the song. It's almost the like exact opposite of what Fish does in their jams, where they'll like chase an idea and it gets crazy, and then they come back in on the one and the same thing and like resume the song, like on a David Bowie or something like that. But they're doing the exact opposite of it. Fish does this sometimes too, where it just completely falls apart and then they come back in. But it's definitely not as tightly orchestrated as that. It definitely seems like Fish has it down to a science. This is more like a bunch of guys just fooling around, but it works so perfectly. So many flavors in this. The end, there's a nice little pickup tempo jam in the middle where things all of a sudden start to feel like it's like a boogie jam, and things are gonna get out of control. They kind of reel that in, kind of gets really jazzy, almost like a weird country jazz towards the end, just very like upbeat, almost like this weird shuffle energy. And then towards the very end, right before they like go into the closing, A Token of My Extreme, gets very Mahavishnu orchestra-ish. There's definitely some jazzy tones with a little bit of like proggy bass mixed in. Like this solo is all over the place. Like if your favorite solos or there's like cohesive narrative thread running through all of them type solos, this is not the one for you. But if you just want to hear a band, Frank and the rest of the band with the guitar player in the front, just jamming out all these different incredible ideas for like 3 or 4 minutes, like this is it. There are so many amazing flavors in this. It's like a charcuterie board. Charcuterie, I'm not saying that right. Board of just guitar ideas, and you just get to sample them all. Such a good solo. But it loses points for not being completely cohesive narrative thread. But anyways, it's still fantastic. Number 2 is the Inca Road solo. Everything from this show is the Inca Roads one size fits all other than the solo. The solo was taken from the Helsinki shows later in the year, a month later than this. And that solo was used, the one that's on stage 2, on one size fits all. But the rest of this is what's on one size fits all, this performance. Had he included the solo, one size fits all would still be the awesome, had he included this solo, because this is a great solo. This solo, definitely not as, I think, epic as the one on stage 2. I think that one is slightly more just like impressive. This one sounds like an 88 solo. It has that sort of airy kind of like lightness about it, but it's still got that 74 tone. So Frank is playing ideas similar to like what he would play in 88. But when he needs that little extra bite or that little extra just energy, this tone gives it to him. And so he's able to like kind of, you know, get in there and like grind, get his teeth into stuff a little more than he can in 88. And so it's the mix of like those ideas and that sort of floatiness that 88 has with this tone and this rhythm section, and George Duke in particular, who is always there, just kind of pushing and needling and just inspiring Frank to go different places. Like those little things take that 88 energy and just transform it into something completely different. Completely different energy than the one on stage 2, but still a pretty epic Inca Roads. I wrote the dancing. It just feels like Frank is dancing with all these different like ideas, and it's just he's flowing and he's so comfortable, and the band just takes it to the next level. There's some nice like as the solo goes on, the band just starts this stomp where they're still in the same Inca groove, but they're just coming down hard on like the downbeats, and it just becomes this like almost like locomotive feel, but Frank is still in like this floaty Inca Roads vibe, and then he starts to respond to them. And of course, as soon as he amps it up, they bring it back down, and it's amazing. It's such a journey. Like this band is absolutely amazing. Just the way they're all connected, and it really is. Doesn't quite, as we get on through the years, Frank's solo definitely feels like Frank's solo. Like this is his spot to solo. In 74, it feels like this is their spot to jam. They're just going to be jamming behind Frank. I know that's only semantics, but to me, it makes a difference. And number 1, possibly one of my favorite solos of all time, definitely in the top 10, Florentine Pogan, one of the ultimate awesome rock, just big stage, amazing solos Frank has ever delivered. So many great things. It starts off with this George like run down the keyboards, and then Frank comes in with these notes that he kind of holds a little bit. Then he's just off on these runs. He has all these different sort of like melodic ideas that pop up through the solo. There are times when it almost feels like a pre-written solo. There are so many ideas that are like, oh, I've heard that before, but you haven't. Frank's just like making it up on the spot. Then when he gets to the end of the solo, which is just like absolutely just tearing it up for like several minutes. Lots of moments of like dramatic tension. There's rest. He's like holding out notes and then like ripping off fast ones, holding them out, ripping off fast ones. When he gets back into the song at the end, he incorporates the build up back into the song with his playing. And as the band is going through like, you know, the changes to get them back into the conclusion, Frank's tearing off more solos. And then when they reach to the conclusion, he's tearing off more solos and just going off, kind of like a trying to grow a chin thing where he's just going crazy at the end. And he just never stops going off. It is fantastic. And it is exhilarating. It is like, You go to see a rock band, this is how they end their concerts, and there's fireworks and people are going crazy. And this is how he just does it in the middle of a show. Absolutely fantastic. But yeah, that's it. There they are right there. That's what they all look like in print, all 7 of them. All of them fantastic. And I give them numbers, and I take those numbers and I average them out, 7 songs, add them up, divide by 7, and it puts it right there. I think this is the best album as far as guitar solo playing Frank has released in the 26 I've done so far. You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore Volume 2 has 3, I would argue, perfect solos. This does not. This has 1 perfect solo, a couple that are almost there. But Volume 2 has a couple solos that are just kind of throwaway solos, and so it brings the average down. This doesn't have a wasted note on it. It is a near perfect exploration of Frank's guitar playing, with what I would argue is the best overall band he's ever had to support that guitar playing. So yeah, but if you've watched this channel for any length of time, you knew that was coming, and you knew that was the conclusion I was going to come to. So anyways, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, comment. Let me know your thoughts on these solos, on this tour, on my over infatuation with this band. Perfect band. But anyways, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Go listen to music. Go listen to this Florentine Pogan, one of the greatest solos ever. Peace. Talk to you later.